Angela's hands trembled as she scrolled through Michael's phone, every swipe sending a jolt of disbelief straight through her chest because what she stumbled upon wasn't a text from a friend she knew about or a random notification. It was a collection of messages and voice notes from someone Michael had never mentioned, someone who suddenly made her entire world tilt sideways. Her eyes widened, her chest tightened, and for a moment, the room felt smaller, heavier, as if the air itself was charged with tension that neither of them could escape. Michael, sitting across from her, noticed the shift instantly. His usual calm demeanor cracked for the first time in months, his brows knitting together, a faint tremor in his jaw, because he knew she had found something he didn't expect her to find, something he had deliberately kept hidden. Every second stretched out, as Angela's hand hovered over the next message, her heart pounding with that unmistakable cocktail of hurt, confusion, and anger, and you could almost hear the silence screaming between them louder than any words ever could. Welcome back to TLC Drama Live, your go-to spot for the raw, unfiltered moments from 90 Day Fiancé that have fans talking for weeks. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below what you think Michael might have been hiding, because this is about to get intense. Angela's voice, normally so steady, now wavered with disbelief in a kind of quiet fury that only comes when someone realizes there's been a shadow in their relationship they never knew about. She held the phone closer, tilting it slightly as if hoping the screen would somehow explain itself, and her fingers hovered over the playback button for one of the voice notes, the one that started innocently enough with a laugh, a casual greeting, but quickly evolved into a tone that was raw, vulnerable, almost haunting. Michael's eyes darted from her face to the phone and back again, a mix of panic and frustration flickering across his features because he knew the walls he had built to keep this part of his life private were crumbling in real time. Every fan watching would immediately start asking themselves the same questions Angela was asking in that moment. Was this just an old friend? Was it something deeper? Was Michael keeping secrets that could unravel everything they had worked so hard to show the world? Angela's lips parted, but the words that finally came out were slow, deliberate, and dripping with the weight of betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" she asked, her voice quiet, but cutting, a single question that carried decades of unspoken assumptions and expectations. The camera lingered on Michael, and you could see him flinch ever so slightly, a human reaction to the confrontation he had long feared, but never thought would arrive so suddenly. The room felt electric, every glance a conversation in itself, every pause between words adding more fuel to the fire, because in that instant, both of them were fully aware that their private universe had been punctured by a reality neither could fully control. Even without knowing the content of the messages yet, viewers can feel the tension clawing through the frame. Angela's heart hurt not because of infidelity, but because of omission, because someone she loved had chosen to protect a piece of his past over sharing it with her and Michael's. Anxiety was unmistakable, that mix of guilt and defensiveness that happens when you're caught between honesty and embarrassment, and the voice notes themselves were compelling. Small pockets of truth that revealed Michael's vulnerability, his reliance on someone else during lonely nights, difficult days, moments of cultural adjustment that no one had seen, moments that fans had speculated about, but never in this tangible electric way. As Angela scrolled further, her expression shifted from shock to deep contemplation, her mind racing through memories and interactions, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the reality that some parts of him had been hidden intentionally or not. Every viewer in that moment would feel the pull to keep watching, to understand not just what the messages said, but why Michael had kept them, what this meant for their relationship, and how Angela would respond. The tension built like a taut wire, every small gesture magnified. The way Michael's fingers tapped nervously on the table, the slight slump of his shoulders, the almost imperceptible quiver in Angela's voice, all adding layers to the drama that no one could ignore. And just when the intensity feels like it might break, Angela holds the phone a little higher, her voice a mix of pain and challenge. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Leaving the question hanging unanswered and the audience on the edge of their seats, hearts racing, minds spinning desperate to know the next move. Because nothing about this moment is ordinary, it is raw. It is emotional and it is completely unmissable. A perfect storm of secrecy, trust, and the human need to be fully seen by someone you love. Every second of hesitation, every flicker of emotion, every unspoken thought is a thread pulling viewers deeper. And as the camera captures Angela's unwavering gaze and Michael's shifting expression, the stage is set for the kind of confrontation that fans will dissect and debate endlessly, making them lean forward, stay glued, and anticipate every next revelation like their own heart depends on it. The first few messages Angela read seemed harmless, almost mundane, like nothing more than friendly banter between two people who shared a history. Laughing emojis, casual check-ins, small talk about everyday life. But even in those seemingly innocent exchanges, there was a subtle undertone that suggested a connection Michael had carefully kept out of the light. As Angela scrolled deeper, the tone shifted. The messages became longer, layered with confessions, admissions of fear, loneliness, and moments when Michael had leaned on this person in ways he never let anyone else see. The voice notes were even more revealing. At first, laughter and casual chatter, then long pauses filled with vulnerability, raw emotion bleeding through the casual fade. Angela felt a surge of confusion. This wasn't betrayal in the traditional sense, not infidelity, but it was something that made her feel unseen, excluded from a side of Michael's life she had assumed was his to share. It was the kind of hurt that gnaws at you quietly, but deeply, because it exposes not a betrayal of love, but a gap in trust, a shadow that had existed while she thought she knew everything. The psychological tension in the room was palpable. Angela's hands shook, not from anger, but from the quiet storm of disappointment and disbelief that comes when someone you love keeps a piece of themselves hidden. She wasn't jealous. She didn't suspect infidelity. What burned was the knowledge that for years Michael had turned to someone else for comfort, for emotional support, for reassurance, and she had been kept on the outside. She felt the sting of exclusion, a betrayal of trust so subtle, yet so profound that it cut deeper than any obvious lie could. And Michael, sensing her turmoil, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking nervously to her face, trying to anticipate the storm he had somehow invited into their home without realizing it. Every message Angela read raised more questions than answers, creating a chain of curiosity that pulled the viewer along. Why hadn't Michael shared this part of his life? Was this purely a support system, someone he leaned on during hard times, or had the boundaries blurred in ways Angela and the fans couldn't immediately understand? Each new voice note teased another layer of Michael's emotional world, drawing Angela deeper into a truth she never imagined existed. The more she listened, the more she realized these conversations weren't built around romance or secret promises. They were built around fear, loneliness, uncertainty, and the pressure Michael had carried while trying to balance two completely different lives. His words revealed a man struggling to protect everyone around him while quietly losing pieces of himself along the way. Yet for Angela, none of those explanations erased the single question echoing inside her mind. If these conversations were innocent, why had he hidden them for so long? Why had she needed to discover them on her own instead of hearing the truth directly from the man she loved? Michael slowly leaned forward, careful not to make any sudden movement that might make the situation even worse. His breathing became heavier as he searched Angela's face for any sign that she might still be willing to listen before reaching a conclusion. But Angela remained silent. Her eyes stayed fixed on the phone while another recording began to play through the speaker. The voice on the other end sounded familiar, calm, reassuring, almost like someone trying to keep Michael emotionally grounded during one of the most difficult periods of his life. There were no romantic words, no declarations of love. Instead, there were reminders to stay focused, stay patient, and never lose hope despite everything happening around him. For a brief second, Angela's expression softened, but only slightly. The pain she felt wasn't disappearing. It was changing. The anger that had first exploded inside her was now becoming something much more complicated. She wasn't only questioning Michael's honesty anymore. She was questioning how much of his emotional life had existed beyond her reach. That realization hurt more than she expected because relationships are often built on the belief that every important struggle is shared together. Finding out that someone you love faced some of those battles alone can leave a wound just as deep as discovering an outright lie. Michael finally broke the silence. His voice was barely above a whisper as he admitted that there were moments when he didn't know how to explain everything he was feeling. Moving between countries, adjusting to different expectations, facing constant public criticism, and carrying the weight of endless speculation had become overwhelming. He confessed that sometimes he reached out to the one person who had known him long before television cameras entered his life because he needed someone who understood the version of himself that existed before the headlines, before the interviews, and before millions of strangers believed they already knew his story. Angela listened carefully, but her expression remained unreadable. She wanted to believe him. She wanted every word to be true. Yet trust, once shaken, demands more than explanations. It demands transparency, patience, and proof. She slowly placed the phone on the table, folded her arms, and looked directly into Michael's eyes. For the first time since the confrontation began, neither of them looked away. It was a quiet battle between two people who desperately wanted to save what they had but suddenly realized how fragile it had become. Michael admitted that he had convinced himself keeping those conversations private would protect everyone involved. He believed Angela would misunderstand the friendship, especially given how many rumors had surrounded their relationship over the years. Instead of risking another argument, he chose silence. Looking back, he realized that silence had become its own form of deception. Every secret, no matter how harmless it seems at the beginning, grows heavier with time until eventually it demands to be discovered. Angela's eyes filled with emotion as she remembered countless nights when Michael seemed distant, distracted, or emotionally unavailable. At the time she assumed stress, work, or public attention had drained him. Now those memories looked different. She wondered whether those were the same nights he had been pouring his thoughts into someone else's inbox instead of sharing them with her. That possibility left her heart aching in ways she struggled to explain even to herself. The room remained silent for several long seconds. Outside, everyday life continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but inside those four walls everything had changed. Every memory they had built together was suddenly being examined through a new lens. Every promise they had made now carried fresh questions. Neither of them wanted the relationship to end, but both understood that surviving this moment would require more honesty than either had shown in a very long time. Michael took a deep breath before making one final admission. He explained that he never intended to replace Angela emotionally. The conversations represented a chapter of survival rather than romance. They helped him navigate fear, homesickness, and uncertainty during moments when he believed nobody else could truly understand what he was experiencing. Yet he acknowledged that by hiding those conversations he had unintentionally created the very misunderstanding he hoped to avoid. Angela remained quiet, allowing every word to settle before responding. She knew forgiveness could not happen in a single conversation. Trust could not be rebuilt in one afternoon. It would take time, difficult conversations, uncomfortable honesty, and a willingness from both of them to confront every unanswered question still hanging between them. As she reached for the phone once more, the screen illuminated another unread message, reminding them both that the story was far from over and that the next revelation could either begin the healing process or push their relationship to a point from which there would be no easy return. The notification remained untouched for several seconds, glowing against the dark screen like a silent invitation neither of them wanted to accept. Angela's fingers hovered above it before she finally unlocked the message. The room fell into complete silence as her eyes moved slowly across every line. Unlike the earlier conversations, this exchange carried a different weight. It spoke about uncertainty, difficult decisions, and the emotional exhaustion Michael had been carrying behind closed doors. There were no romantic promises or secret plans hidden between the words. Instead, there were repeated reminders for him to stay strong, to avoid making impulsive decisions, and to remember that difficult seasons eventually pass. Even so, Angela couldn't ignore one painful truth. Someone else had been present during Michael's darkest moments while she remained unaware those moments even existed. Michael watched every change in Angela's expression with growing anxiety. He knew she wasn't simply reading messages anymore. She was rebuilding an image of their entire relationship, piece by piece, through information he had never shared. That realization frightened him more than any argument ever could, because once trust begins to fracture, even the smallest unanswered question can become impossible to silence. He wanted to interrupt, to explain every message before she reached the end, but he resisted. For the first time, he understood that explanations delivered too early might sound like excuses instead of honesty. Angela finally looked up from the phone, her eyes searching Michael's face for answers words alone couldn't provide. She quietly admitted that what hurt most wasn't the conversations themselves. It was realizing how many opportunities he had been given to tell her the truth but chose not to. Every anniversary, every celebration, every difficult conversation they had survived together suddenly felt incomplete because an entire emotional chapter had remained hidden from view. She wondered how many other moments had unfolded beyond her knowledge while she believed they were sharing everything with one another. Michael nodded slowly, accepting the weight of her disappointment without trying to defend himself. He explained that fear had gradually shaped his decisions. Every time he considered bringing up those conversations, he imagined another misunderstanding, another argument, another headline twisting private struggles into public entertainment. Eventually, hiding the friendship became easier than explaining it. Looking back, he realized that every decision made from fear had quietly pushed them further apart instead of protecting what mattered most. Angela let out a slow breath and returned her attention to the phone. One final voice note remained unheard. She hesitated before pressing play, almost afraid that whatever came next would permanently change the way she viewed the man sitting across from her. The recording began with several seconds of silence before Michael's voice emerged, noticeably younger, quieter, and filled with uncertainty. He spoke about missing home, struggling with constant criticism, and wondering whether his marriage could survive the endless pressure surrounding their lives. The response from the other person wasn't dramatic or emotional. It was calm, encouraging, and focused entirely on helping him remain hopeful despite everything happening around him. As the recording ended, another silence settled over the room. This one felt different. The initial shock had faded, replaced by something much more difficult to process. Angela realized the messages didn't reveal a secret romance. They revealed a version of Michael she had rarely been allowed to see, a version that battled insecurity, isolation, and overwhelming pressure while trying to appear strong for everyone else. That realization softened some of her anger, but it didn't erase the pain created by years of secrecy. Michael quietly admitted that he had spent too much time worrying about how the truth might be received instead of trusting Angela enough to hear it from him first. He confessed that every hidden conversation added another layer of guilt until eventually he convinced himself it was too late to explain anything without causing even greater damage. Ironically, that very decision led them to the exact confrontation he had feared all along. Angela slowly placed the phone back on the table and leaned into her chair. Her emotions were impossible to separate.